guys, welcome back to another episode of the Light Side Podcast. My name is Shola, I'm your host, and in today's episode, we're going to talk about mindset shifts and practices that can help us in dealing with challenging times. The way I like to think about our mindset is like an inner compass. It determines how we interpret challenges, how we react, and ultimately where we end up with things. And we can strengthen our mindset to boost our resiliency and be an agent of positivity and hope for others too. Resilience is like a muscle. The more we exercise a resilient mindset, the stronger we get. And our mindset shapes our reality. Like having sunglasses can change how we see things and filter out the colors. We can filter out our experiences. With a positive mindset, we can make difficulties more manageable. While a negative mindset can make the minor challenges seem overwhelming. And so when we cultivate a positive growth mindset, we increase the likelihood of finding a solution because we're not in fight or flight, and we lean into that knowing that difficult times are the greatest teachers that help us learn and evolve. And most importantly, they pass. Everything is cyclical in nature. Everything has a phase, a beginning, and an end. That's a reassuring thought and sigh of relief for good and for bad. It helps ensure that we experience the hard times with more ease because we know they'll pass. And it helps us cherish the good times because we also know they'll pass. Here we go. I'm going to share some practical mindset shifts and practices we can do when we're in the midst of a lot of turmoil. My number one was actually the ups and downs are temporary. So we're going to go into number two, which is challenge your thoughts. I love this analogy that I learned and heard on a guided meditation where they spoke of the difference of throwing a stick at a dog versus a lion. When you throw a stick at a dog, the dog will run to chase it, versus when you throw a stick at a lion, the lion will chase the thrower. And putting that into the perspective of our thoughts and our mindset, consider your thought this to be the stick, right? We want to be like the lion where we nip the thought in the bud instead of chasing it down a rabbit hole, which tends to take us to a negative, dark place. A lot of our thoughts don't serve us. And so being able to discern and ask yourself, how accurate is this thought? Is it true? Is it an assumption? Do I have evidence of this? Can really help us deal with thoughts that are not only discouraging, but challenging, fear-invoking, anxiety-provoking. Really, we can't believe everything we think. There's a lot of fear-induced thoughts that flood in, and we need to be able to be like that lion and stop the thought right there. And what you can do is say, not right now. It really is powerful to be able to stop yourself at the very beginning of a thought and shift your focus. What you can do is focus on your breath. Maybe count 2, 3. That's, also why I'm such a big proponent of affirmations or having mantras, so that you can take your mind to a mantra or something other than that thought that is going to take you down a rabbit hole. There was this quote that I read the other day, or maybe it was in a book. It said something along the lines of 70 or 80% of our worries never happen. And so that's a really powerful reminder of, okay, like what is the likelihood of this? What's the best case scenario? What's the more likely scenario? And really ground ourselves going down the rabbit hole of something that's very unlikely and is just adding turmoil and pain to your now, to your present moment. And I think that's one of the most powerful things we can do for ourselves, is doing even the smallest thing to improve our now is the way to getting a happier overall life, because our life is accumulation of nows, is accumulation of present moments, right? And so if we can manage our now so that we are less anxious, we are less worried, we are less consumed by fear, and that shifts our experiences so much, like we talked about in the first episode. And the flip side of fear is peace and ease. Leading into number 3, and this is really around growth and learning from fear and seeing it as an opportunity to learn and grow. For instance, the news shares something that's deeply frustrating and hard to witness, and it shares a narrative, a story, and this is a lot of times where we subscribe to a certain channel and then we adopt and embody that channel's belief systems. Whereas, really, it's so valuable to be able to take a step back and make a decision as far as, okay, this is something that I'm consuming. I choose to listen, to hear a point of view, hear different perspectives. But to form an opinion, I'm going to go to the source and try to understand the truth of it, finding it as an opportunity to learn and grow instead of just adopting whatever headline we receive, and trying to avoid getting into the trap of buying fake news, because that is such a big issue right now. And being able to understand from your own perspective, there's always two sides to everything, right? There's the truth and then the opinion. Or maybe there's three sides. It's like your point of view, the opposing point of view, and the truth. And so being able to set aside our agenda, set aside obviously we each have our own conditioning, our own triggers, but being able to set that aside, to see it as an opportunity to grow, learn on a topic, maybe become something you dive deep into. I love using ChatGPT as a source of, obviously it's not going to give you current events. I think the latest is as of January 2022, but it is going to be able to share history with you if you're interested in the history of something, so you can form your own opinion. It is really powerful in doing that, and really allowing ourselves to be able to change the dialogue, the paradigm of the experience. There's a lot of wisdom in the teachings that say darkness can't take out darkness, only light can. And the same thing, like hate cannot take out hate. And so consider, how can I add to the light, to the positivity? It's not to say, that we need to stand on a podium and preach. We're all experiencing and learning and growing together as a collective. No one person knows it all. We are at different stages of our growth, of course, but sometimes standing in our light means shining through educating ourselves, through learning, through giving the energy that we want to be the change, not just someone who speaks of it. It's focusing our energy on what we want things to be versus what they are. Giving energy to what we want versus what is. So as we all know, no amount of focus on hate will take out hate. It exasperates it. If someone is really set on their way of thinking one way, it's really tempting to try to convince them otherwise. I say that from firsthand experience, but that's engaging in almost an argument, because it's like our ego comes in to prove that your perspective is more true, which aggravates the other person even more, because their ego then will chime in to want to be right instead. And so the only way through is within in some cases. And sometimes that means leaving a conversation without proving your point. It means focusing your attention and energy on bringing the light through, which is why I love meditating and prayer instead of fueling the fire. There is so many ways that people can get to the truth of something if they really want to. And choosing to learn another perspective is a personal choice. It's a decision that no one can force on anyone. Is helpful in avoiding the disruption of our peace. Another way to think about it, think of it like pushing against the wall. Two people are on each side, on opposing sides of a solid wall. They try to move it. No matter how much force they apply, the wall is gonna remain unmoved. It's the same thing when we're trying to convince each other with opposing viewpoints. We often end up exerting a ton of energy, like pushing against the wall, but without making any progress. And so, the idea of trying to confront negativity with confrontation, that it really just takes and drains your energy. And instead, we can embody positivity, educate ourselves, and disengage from debates that aren't necessarily going to move the needle. That sometimes, it does happen gradually through conversations, through many conversations. Someone's perspective may shift. But what can really help move the needle is knowing, for one, as humans, we have the tendency to want to problem solve. We focus on the negative because we're trying to find things to fix, without realizing that we may be exasperating it. And the way to sometimes solve things and to get through anger is through active listening. and asking open-ended questions, helping break down the frustration by engaging with someone through seeking to understand them, not to win them, not to prove them a certain way, not to try to convince them otherwise. And also knowing that we each have a certain perspective, putting ourselves in other people's shoes and recognizing that there's a reason why people have a certain perspective, practicing empathy and patience, and also knowing when to disengage, because your energy, again, going back to us focusing on improving our nows, because our life is a collective of our nows, our now moments, our present moments. Our nows is the correct way of saying it. We want to be able to disengage when things are unproductive and are draining. We can't, this example I used in another episode, it's the whole concept of being able to put our own mask on first before we can help others. And so if you find yourself in situations where you're draining your energy, it's not going to be able to help the collective energy. It's not going to be able to help uplift the collective energy. Going back to prayer and meditation, there's a lot of research that proves the power of collective energy and group prayer. I've read it in many books, like The Seat of the Soul, I believe, talked about where a group of patients were being observed and were part of an experiment of being prayed for as a collective. They were in mind, they were focused on their healing, and they were aware of it. And they saw improvement in their complications and almost miraculous changes in the results versus the group that wasn't informed of prayer, nor were they praying. Something that really helps me in times of turmoil and challenges is saying a mantra that, doesn't have to be religious. It can just be something along the lines of, may I be well, may I be healthy, may I be at peace. And maybe taking it further to say, thank you for the light that guides me, for the love that uplifts me. In challenges, I stand tall with hope and strength through it all. And really, whatever comes to you, but sharing these positive mantras can really help ground and center you in this moment and everything that's going on around you, and just center yourself with your intentions, well-being, which is peace, which is joy, which is health, which is prosperity. That's the next point, actually. Gratitude is the one solution to everything. I think Jay Shetty said this in his book, Think Like a Monk. There's actually been research done at a university, I can't remember off the top of my head, but that said that if gratitude could be a pill that people could consume, it would be the medicine for everything out there. Every single illness could be healed through gratitude. So focus on the good, no matter how small. Having a gratitude journal is one of the best things to invest your time in. Gratitude is healing on so many levels. You can go back to what you've written in times, write new entries for what's in front of you right now. I think that's the most important thing, to daily get your mind thinking about what is in front of you right now that you truly from your heart appreciate. It's also helpful to do this exercise of thinking back on times when you did have a really difficult experience, challenging time, and think about how that past, have that as an example to lean on. Number 6 is reframe the negative dialogue with positive affirmations. I'm making a separate episode for affirmations, but remember, words are spells. Like Bruce Lee says, that's why it's called spelling. Also, I'm not certain if that was actually said by Bruce Lee. I've just seen it a lot on the internet, so correct me if I'm wrong. Don't shoot the messenger. I share positive affirmations on my Instagram story daily. If you're not there, check it out. Okay, and the next one is using the 5 whys technique. Break down the negative thoughts or beliefs that are challenging you. So it can be definitely more than 5 whys, but this is the process of asking yourself why you have a certain belief until you get to the root cause. Let's say you start with a statement. Let's say that statement is, I hate that I can't speak up in work meetings. Then you ask yourself, why do you think you can't speak up in work meetings? Say, well, because I don't think my ideas are good enough. And then you ask yourself, well, why don't you think your ideas are good enough? So it's because people laugh or tell me my idea wasn't good. And then it's like, okay, well, why do you think that your idea wasn't good? And, maybe I didn't fully research it or think it through. And it's like, well, why didn't you? And it's like, because I have too much on my plate. I didn't have enough time. Okay. So that's the problem. The problem isn't that your ideas aren't good enough, but it's that your workload is too big, or your time management is where we need to work on to fully create an idea. So it doesn't necessarily have to do with you hating to speak up at meetings because your ideas aren't good enough, but so that you have enough time to formulate an idea so that you can present it. And that's the level of digging we can do on our negative beliefs so that we can really put them aside for good, put them to rest. Addressing our negative beliefs heads on also helps us with that whole fear of rejection that we face that keeps us small, because, we're breaking down the negative belief to really discern its validity, if it's actually even valid, and then have a plan to address it and truly overcome it. And that's when we become unstoppable, because our negative beliefs, fears, and thoughts that aren't serving us can no longer hold us back. So that's what we can do to really break down our negative beliefs or thoughts so that they stop reoccurring and they stop being in our way. Which takes me to point number 8, and that's consuming media mindfully. If we can detach from the news as part of our morning routine, that's like planting a huge seed of peace and joy in your daily life. Many news channels and even social media are feeding stories that are typically given top down. Aside from that, so much false news is circulated and goes viral on various platforms. They are triggering. They're extremely triggering. And it can take our mind just a few seconds to get distraught by it. And before we know it, we've spent hours going down a rabbit hole or engaging in a lot of really heated conversations, which really makes us part of the problem instead of being able to help the problem. Because when we do that, we can't help the cause of the good, the light, the peace, when we're also going down the rabbit hole of pain, hatred, and anger. So I really suggest doing this if you can. It's one of the best things I did for my mental health, to have a balance of your news intake, to have like a weekly news recap versus engaging in it every hour of every day. I understand sometimes there's like key breaking news happening, but being mindful to limit the intake and then try to offset it with positivity, especially when it feels like, we can't really do much. If we think about the collective energy, we're just adding on more fuel to the fire versus offsetting it with joy and happiness and peace. I'll try to avoid going on a big tangent about the news, but really a lot of times what news does is it triggers fear and worry in us, and it fuels us in a way in which it brings our energy down to lower vibrations, which makes us a match for lower vibration events and things that we don't want to experience. So granted, I'm saying all of this generally speaking. Obviously, we each have a different disposition for news and different energies that we can consume, but there is such a thing as being overly stimulated. With so much happening, there's never been a time in history that we could get so much live news of misfortune and bad things happening around the world, and even within our neighborhoods. And I appreciate that awareness is really key. It's important in order to safeguard ourselves and to keep ourselves feeling secure. But there's also too much information at times. Like sometimes ignorance is bliss, right? There is, when I think about the time I lived in New York, I had a friend who had an app, and the app told her every time there was somebody either walking around with a knife or a gun. And, New York City is obviously very condensed. And I remember she would always raise like, oh my goodness, there's somebody seen with a knife just right down the street from us. There were, I spent 7 years and 9 months in New York City, 7.5 years. I never once, came across any, there was definitely times where I experienced hostility in the subway or other places or on the street. But the fact that I wasn't focused on it, I wasn't attracting it. And, I talked about this in my last episode. I think sometimes news tends to get us on edge, tends to get us in the energy of fear, which matches us to things to be fearful of and to experiences that are of low vibrational energy. And really disconnecting yourself from the news can be so beneficial in so many aspects, not only for your mental health, but just for your overall well-being. There is a thing as too much information, right? There's like, everyone goes through hardship. Everyone goes through happiness and smiles, everyone to their own degree. It's subjective. People experience things differently. They have different measures of happiness and success, etc. But, we should also be able to enjoy our moment in the sun, as Brianna Weiss puts it. Everything is temporary. And so this moment that I have right now, I'm going to cherish it. I'm not going to dilute this moment of peace, this moment of joy, with fear of what's happening somewhere else. Again, I appreciate that this isn't relative to everything, and there's a lot happening in the world. Please take what resonates and drop what doesn't. I understand that what I'm saying is not one size fits all. Appreciate that. I don't know everything, right? But I just know from personal experience and for what I've observed that our energy is really sensitive. It can be really sensitive, some people more than others, to the news that's happening around the world, and that it can really be a disservice to us. Something that I love to do and is a very powerful way to shift your energy is number 9, visualization. Really picturing what you wish the outcome to be, really imagining how it could be instead. I shared this on my Instagram before, and I shared envisioning a free and prosperous society, imagining it with full faith, with full belief, like feeling how it feels to see people really living their liberty. It's really powerful. Remember, everything is first experienced in our mind before it shows up in our reality. And lastly, what human beings have done for centuries, really dating back to the beginning of human existence actually, is leaning on our community and friends during challenging times. There is a great emphasis across many religions, philosophies, and cultures on community support. And because through our community and our friends, we feel emotional support. We feel understood, we feel heard, we feel seen. And there's a sense of comfort that we can get through these difficult times that, we're not alone. Others share the struggle. Others can understand where you're coming from. And not only that, but also provide you with perspective, or maybe you just need an ear. Sometimes there's tangible support our friends and community can provide. And other times it's just the simple act of talking about problems and difficulties that help make them feel more manageable. You're not alone. And there's a reason why there's over 8 billion of us. I encourage you to practice these, engage with your friends, your community, reach out to a coach. A coach is an amazing resource to help you during challenging times. The coaches can help you plan and dig deep, and therapists as well, of course. Sometimes all we need is a little push to get through difficult times, and knowing that we have people in our lives, whether it's your friends, your family, a community, or a coach, a therapist, whatever it may be, but that you have people who are rooting for you, that are helping you through, keeping you accountable, but just being there and reinforcing a sense of belonging, a sense of purpose, a sense of togetherness. It's really vital for our mental and our spiritual well-being. I hope these were helpful. Please let me know your thoughts. I love hearing from you. I love to hear if they resonated. And if you have practices that you do that I didn't talk about, I'd love to hear about it. I love to hear how you go through challenging times or difficult periods in your life. Another announcement before I let you go, I'm going to be guest teaching at a retreat in Hawaii for 3 weeks, and I'm so thrilled. This has been something I've been manifesting for a long time. I'm going to be partaking both in the 200-hour yoga teacher training, but also I'll be teaching inner growth workshops. For whoever signs up with me or through me, you will receive a gift and a surprise. And depending on when you book, because I'm not sure when you'll be listening to this episode, please reach out to me. I may have a discount code for you as well. Let me know if you have questions. I'm happy to share details. It is on the most sacred land that I have ever experienced. After all the travels I've done through South America and Asia and just throughout the world, it is extremely spiritual. It is so serene. You get fully disconnected. You are about 2 hours outside of the airport in Maui, on East Maui, and you are surrounded by the forest. You can see every single star in the sky, including the Milky Way galaxy. It is an experience unlike any other. What you can expect to walk away with is inner growth workshops, self-discovery, really deeply rooting and connecting with yourself, getting into the yoga practice, the yoga lifestyle, adopting healthy habits, releasing past weight, experiencing sound baths and herbalism, and learning about Ayurveda, going to the tallest waterfalls and secret secluded beaches. It is incredible. Resetting and setting intentions for the new year, feeling really rejuvenated and almost like a slingshot into the new year. You'll make soon to be lifelong friends. You'll have meals that are farm grown and prepared on the same property. You'll get a digital detox. That is one of the best parts of it. You can really experience nature unlike any other. And one of the things that I share with people is the amount of exotic tropical fruits that are on that farm. I stayed in Hawaii afterwards and I tried to find the fruits that we consumed and it was impossible to find. So it's really a unique opportunity to experience Hawaii and Maui in particular as a local and a secluded farm with amazing like-minded people. To ground, to connect, to grow, to manifest. We do a lot of manifestation workshops. So if you feel called to this, please reach out to me. I'd love to have you join, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. If you found this episode helpful, please let me know. Please share your suggestions and feedback of any kind. I love hearing from you. If there are topics you'd like to hear more of, or you want to go on a deep dive about, please let me know. And if this resonates, please share it with your friends or family or colleagues that you think would find it beneficial. With that said, I thank you so much for being here. I hope you enjoyed this. And until next time, I send you tons of love.